Hey guys, this is Brian. I have an Irrigreen system right here in my front yard. I installed it myself a couple months ago, somewhere in the May-June timeframe. I'm filming this towards the end of August. I've used it for a couple months now, and I want to tell you why you should not buy one. I brainstormed this for about a month or so. I heavily brainstormed it over the past couple days. I have decided that this really awesome sprinkler system is not for everybody. There's an awful lot of people that would benefit from it, and I think it should be in more lawns. However, it's just not for everybody. I've got 17 things on my list that I want to briefly talk about that will explain to you why it's not for everybody. So let's get into the list. Although I installed this myself, I still had to have a plumber come out early on before I started doing any of the digging and trenching to make sure that my water main was fine. Like, I needed to tap into the actual water line, and the plumber was able to let me do that. He switched out a couple of the valves. He could put in a backflow preventer. They don't necessarily have to everywhere. But these are kinds of things that most regular homeowners probably shouldn't be doing. Probably could, but I don't want to risk it myself, so I had a plumber come out to do it. That's an added cost on top of purchasing the units and the control box and all of that business. To go further into the purchase of these things aren't cheap. You can go off and buy a really nice smart sprinkler for a few $100s, but the smart sprinkler that goes with this Irrigreen system is way more expensive, and it's a fixed cost. So no matter if you've got one control or one sprinkler head in your yard, or if you've got 13 zones, you still have one control box. So the smaller your yard, then the bigger percentage of the cost goes into the controller. Each individual head, of course, is very expensive. However, you only need one for each zone. So that does make trenching and digging and just buying one sprinkler head, it's a lot more palatable than buying like 10 of them and trenching all the way around your entire property zone. Should also say that with the Irrigreen system, because it's one single head that's in the middle of the lawn space, you've got to take one pipe out to it, and you've got to have enough water in that one pipe to sprinkle the whole area. So a traditional system, you're going to go around, you're going to have like 10 sprinkler heads. You can usually use a 1/2-inch PVC that's going to go to each individual sprinkler head. So if you're going to put this in and you have old sprinklers in the lawn, you can't usually tie into those. You almost need your very own dedicated line, which is what I put in over here to get out there, because you got to take basically a 1-inch PVC pipe all the way out to the sprinkler, and then you daisy chain it to the next sprinkler. So it's a brand new pipe. It's going to be hard to tie into the existing piping that might be underground because it might limit the water flow too much. That's not really the biggest problem in the world, because you're going to be doing this piping and trenching anyway, and the cost of PVC pipe is probably small compared to the cost of everything else, but it's something to consider. So when you go and price these things out, of course, you're pricing out for your own property, you're getting the controller and the sprinkler heads, but one of the main costs, one of the biggest costs that is not in the bill is the amount of physical time and effort and labor that you're going to expend digging this thing into the ground, or you're going to pay money to a professional landscape installer to go and install the thing into the lawn. That's going to be a big percentage of your financial outlay. If cost is a concern, then that might actually be the ultimate stop for you, at least for the time being, because it ain't cheap. And no matter what Irrigreen company says, you can't just dig this thing into the ground and be done with it in an afternoon. It took me a long time to put this together, a few weekends of work. Now, before I continue on, I want really to just say that this is a great system, and I think it's going to be amazing for not everybody, but for an awful lot of people. I just don't think it's going to be worth it for everybody. And there's just a number of circumstances that you might actually have in your yard itself, not let alone the cost of the system, but circumstances that are going to make this less likely for me to recommend someone to buy one of these things. One of the biggest selling points of these Irrigreen systems is that you're going to be saving water over the course of a season, and that is completely true. You're not going to have nearly as much overspray. You're not going to have nearly as much water waste. You're going to be able to water precisely only the areas that need it. So in the long run, you're actually going to save a lot of water. So if you were to calculate, like if you put an inch of water down on 1,000 square foot lawn space, that adds up to about 620 gallons of water. So if you're overspraying or if you're double spraying the same area, you could be using 50% more water than you need to very easily. So 300 gallons every watering session. If you do it 5 times, that's 1,500 gallons of water that is not necessary to go in the lawn. So if you look at water bills, depending on where you live, the water, you might not even notice the difference on your water bill. Some places have very cheap water bills. Some places have more expensive water bills. However, the point here is you're going to be saving water, but not everyone is really going to notice a significant difference on their water bill by saving 1,500 gallons per 1,000 square feet of lawn space irrigated. You certainly might, but you might not. I would say that for small yards, this kind of system makes less sense. And the reason for that is because of the fixed cost of the controller and one single sprinkler head, you're looking at a very large dollar amount for a single zone. A small lawn space can be done very efficiently with traditional sprinkler systems if you take the time to do all the trench work and lay it out well. It really doesn't take much more than just putting more sprinkler heads in and spacing them so that you're getting more overlap. That way you can run the sprinklers for less. I mean, that's not the point of this video, but for a small lawn space, you're only just doing the trenching around one small area. And it's just easier. It takes less time to put it in the ground. It takes less equipment to buy. All the materials that you have to buy is just less. A small lawn space, it just makes more sense to put in a well-calibrated traditional system, in my opinion. Also, if you end up having, if you have a yard that has just 90-degree corners everywhere, this Irrigreen system shines when you have curved lines. Like my yard's got a number of curved lines, a big S shape here, a little swooping here. It also shines if you've got weird diagonal angles, things that aren't exactly 90 degrees. If you got planter beds or features in the middle of your yard, you don't have to water them. This can go around those things. But if you don't have any of that stuff, you just got just a rectangle, then this isn't really all that necessary. It's really easy to sit there and outline the whole yard with traditional sprinklers, and you're not going to waste much. Now, in terms of edging lawns, many lawns, especially in the southern portion of the United States, or the warm season grass zones, they need to be edged frequently because they have creepy crawly stolons that will go out over your sidewalks and driveways. Well, if you've got sprinkler heads right on the edge, then those sprinkler heads are frequently getting damaged in these areas. Up north, however, where there's cool season grasses, edging lawns is nowhere near as common. And because of that, sprinkler heads don't get damaged or need to be replaced as often. So I would say that if you have a warm season grass, running an Irrigreen system actually makes more sense. If you're only looking at that one aspect of it, of course. I'd also say that Irrigreen systems don't make any sense if your lawn isn't thick and healthy. I mean, it might not have to be really healthy or really thick, but you can't have a whole bunch of bare dirt, because the water flow coming out of this thing is strong. So if you've got bare dirt on the ground and it's hitting that dirt, it's going to be splashing dirt and mud out all over the place. It's going to cause erosion. And no one is going to be impressed every time your lawn is watered and you got mud all over the place. It's just not pleasant. This lawn right here, I did have some mud or some dirt patches when I installed it, and I kind of didn't water those areas with the Irrigreen sprinkler until the grass filled in. Now that I have full coverage of grass, it's fine to run the Irrigreen all over the place, but it's just something to keep in mind. This is a luxury system, and it's typically going to be in a yard that looks a little bit more luxury. It's taken care of a little bit better. Now, along the lines of the luxury system and the cared for, manicured yard, I actually personally believe, I have no data to support this, but I believe that an installation of something like this in a yard, in a lawn space, will add value to a home. That's just my opinion. I believe it because I am a home buyer. I only recently bought this home, just within the past 9 months or so. If I was home shopping and I saw that a house didn't have any irrigation system in it at all, that would be a negative. If I saw another house that had an in-ground system, I would think, oh, all right, it's got an in-ground system. If it had a Irrigreen system in it, or some other, in the future, if there's other competitor products to this, if it had something like this in the system, I'd be like, whoa, that's fancy. And that would make me, or that would entice me to pay more money for the house. So I don't believe an appraiser is going to change the value of your house based on having this in these days. But we're also in an era of environmentalism by default. I mean, houses have solar panels on them, like from new construction. Solar panels increase the value of a house, and I believe that something like this probably will as well. But don't put this thing in your lawn thinking it's instantly going to improve the value of your home, because I just don't think that's actually going to happen from an appraiser's perspective or a home buyer's perspective, at least for a number of years. I don't know how many years it's going to take, but it ain't going to be immediate. Now, when it comes to actual lawn care, we put grass seed down a lot when we're actually tending to our lawns, whether we're putting new grass on bare dirt to just grow a new lawn from scratch, or we do a lot of overseeding. And you see how this thing, it's able to shoot lightly like this, but it also shoots really far. And because it's shooting really far, it's got an abrasive, when the water hits the ground, it's abrasive. So if you got grass seed on the ground, it's going to move the grass seed. This is not a sprinkler system that I would ever use if I'm trying to grow grass from seed. I'd use it on established grass, but any form of seed, I wouldn't put it on the seed. It's just not going to result in a good lawn establishment. Now, for those of you guys who are renters or who don't own the property that you're living in, an Irrigreen system is probably completely off the board for you, because you would be digging it into the owner's lawn and you wouldn't be able to take it with you. Like, it doesn't stand above the ground. Like, you can't just set this up above the ground like an oscillating sprinkler, and then whenever you move off to the next house, you take it with you. You can't do that. The way it works right up front, like if you look at the lower water flows down here, they're just kind of shooting straight down. But if it's raised up a solid foot, because that's a pretty deep thing, it's about 12 to 13 inches underground. If you put that up above the ground, those lower flows aren't hitting any of the grass around it, because it's not designed to do that. It's designed to shoot it out from ground level. Not only that, but it's shooting a lot of water with a lot of force. So if you're going to have it up above the ground, you have to figure out how to anchor it. You kind of got to jerry-rig some sort of system to anchor it, and you kind of got to jerry-rig some sort of system to hook it up to the hose, because your garden hose that comes out to it has a female garden hose thread fitting on the end of it. And the end of the flex pipe that the water supply goes into is it's a 1-inch male garden hose thread. Basically, they don't go together. You have to figure out the adapter systems to get your garden hose to hook up to the Irrigreen inlet. And you can't PVC pipe it together either. So because it's threaded, if you're threading like a regular sprinkler head, you've got 1/10 of the water pressure going into each individual sprinkler. So the pressure under the threads for a traditional system are much lower. Like, that pressure is lower than it is right here. So you're more likely to have some leaks with the garden hose thread connection there, because there's only one point of weakness and all of the pressure is going to that one single point. I do wish that this was some sort of way of PVC cementing it on. And I understand that would make it hard to replace it later on. You'd have to cut PVC and probably replace the head, but I would like to have that option, because I don't like knowing that I could have a leak underground that I can't see. It's unlikely to be a problem, but I don't like knowing that. Another issue is you can't run 2 zones at one time. So for instance, if you want to max out your sprinkler and cover the most square footage possible, then it makes sense. You're like, I'll just run this one zone, and then once it's done, I'll run the next zone. But if you got, lots of money and you buy a whole bunch of these sprinkler heads to be able to have them closer together, you can't run 2 sprinkler zones at the same time using the Irrigreen system. It's just not the way that it's designed to work. So if you do want to sprinkle the lawn in half the time by running 2 zones at once, it's just not an option. Another issue I've come into that I didn't foresee being a problem when I installed it is when I apply stuff to the lawn, fertilizers or whatever it is that I put on the lawn, if I need to water it in, there's no way for me to just blanket the whole lawn in about like 5 minutes. It's like I just can't do it. You're watching this as it spins around me. It takes a while for it to go all the way around. So if I just need to have like a dusting of water, maybe not a dusting, but a small portion of water going on the entire lawn to water lawn product into the ground, it's going to take a lot of time, which is a little bit annoying depending on the product that you're putting down, because some things dry pretty quickly and you don't want them sitting on a leaf blade. You want them watered down into the soil. Hydrotane, for instance, is one of those products. You spray it on the lawn, you got to water it in immediately. This actually takes a little bit of time. So if I put hydrotane on this and then turn the sprinkler on to water it in, right there it's getting a bunch of water, but over here it's got to wait. It's got to wait for the whole thing to come all the way around. Is that a deal breaker? Probably not all on its own, but it is something to consider. Along the same lines, if you just want to lightly sprinkle the lawn, let's say, for instance, you overseeded into thick turf to kind of alter your grass variety mixture. So seed moving around, that's not a problem, but you do want to keep it moist most of the time for like a week to 2. You can't lightly sprinkle the lawn with this. So like if I have seed down somewhere and I have traditional sprinklers, I can set the sprinklers to go off for like 2 minutes and it'll hit the whole area for 2 minutes and then be done. But with this, you just can't really do that. Like I could set it, I would have to time how long it takes for it to go all the way around in one circumference. I don't know that off the top of my head. And then I would have to sit there and program the sprinkler head to do one exact revolution, however much time that takes. So it's just a little bit more thought involved in doing minor sprinkle jobs. So if you want to syringe your lawn during the summer or something like that. Now another thing, which is the most obvious of them all, is wind. Right now, I've got barely a breeze, but a teeny tiny breeze coming this way, and it alters the flow rate or the flow pattern of the sprinkler. No matter how well calibrated I make this system, like during a windless period of time, it's going to be sprinkling on a timer. If there's a ton of breeze, then the controller won't turn it on at all because it knows it's connected to the internet. You know, little green men are sending it information from space saying, don't do it, there's too much wind. But if there's a little tiny bit of wind, or if you live in an area that your particular house gets a lot of wind, but nobody else does, because maybe you're in a valley or you're on the top of a hill or something about your unique situation, you get a lot of wind. In the real world, you're just going to have a lot of trouble getting exact precision, even if you calibrate the system very, very well under ideal conditions. No matter what, you're always going to have a little bit of wind drift. Even on like a windless day, there's always going to be a small little gust of wind that's going to cause a little bit of loss. So if you expect perfection, then you will be disappointed using this. Now, jumping into other areas of installing this product in different lawn spaces that don't work so well is skinny lawns. So if you got a truly skinny lawn, like less than 10 feet wide, then you can't put this thing in the middle, because if you put it in the middle, you're always going to overspray on both sides of that short width. It's only got a 5-foot minimum throw pattern, which means if you go 5 feet this way and 5 feet that way, it's 10. So your max diameter or your minimum diameter is about 10 feet. Otherwise, you got to put it on the side of the yard. And then if you get below 5 feet, then you literally cannot do it at all without having some overspray. You either overspray or you don't spray at all. So a parkway strip scenario, or maybe a tiny little strip of grass in between 2 hardscapes, these are not areas that you could use this. You would have to use a traditional sprinkler system to get that job done. For me in my yard, I've got an entire zone that is a parkway strip. There's no way that I could run this system on that parkway strip, so I'm not going to try. During the installation process, there's another little quirk. You've got to run the sprinkler cable to each sprinkler head. It's not like you're taking a sprinkler cable just to the valve box. That's not the way that it works. If you take that sprinkler cable in the trench that you're digging anyway to the first sprinkler head, it's fine. It's no big deal. The problem is once you have to go underneath a hardscape, like a driveway or a patio or something like that, you can use a water jet nozzle to put a PVC pipe under to run water. But If you're trying to run the cord under, you got to run a second pipe under. That's what I did for my hardscape over here. If you got a lot of hardscapes, that's going to complicate the installation process. Now, if you gave me a lot of extra time to sit there and think about more problems and issues having to do with installing this in your lawn, I could probably come up with a ton. Here's Benny right here. But every single other negative thing that I could think of is going to get progressively more nitpicky. Like, it's not going to matter as much in your decision-making process to buy something like this. Overall, what you're looking at is larger lawns. The value of putting this in is going to be greater. If you've got curved lines in your lawn, the value of putting this in is going to be greater. If you live in an area where drought restrictions or you don't get a lot of rain, you can't water the lawn willy-nilly like every single day because of local restrictions, this is going to matter because it's going to limit the water usage. Areas that have high cost water bills, you might notice it on the water bill. But I don't think that that's a deciding factor for a lot of people because the size of the water bill is peanuts compared to the cost of the actual equipment and installation. Now, the cost is the most, it's the most asked question that I've fielded over the last few months since I've been running this irrigation system in my own lawn and, of course, running this YouTube channel. People ask all the time, how much does it cost? How much would it take to buy this stuff and put it in the lawn? Now, this is kind of a fluid number game because prices change all the time, so I don't really want to put that in a video, not to mention the fact that every lawn space is a little bit different. But what I did do is I created a blog post where I go into a bunch of hypothetical scenarios that might relate very closely to your yard. Plus the blog post I can change, I can edit it over time if need be, if prices change. Make sure to take a look at the QR code link right here on the screen or the link in the description below. Both of those will take you over to the Turf Mechanic website where you can see that blog post in action in all of its glory. Blog post and this video is not intended to be a sales pitch. It's literally just to try to give you information that's a little bit harder to find anywhere else, because most people posting about this are literally just trying to sell you on it. And I know that it is not right for everyone out there. Before I installed it in my lawn, like I got it here, but before I stuck it in the lawn, I did a trial run above the ground where I jerry-rigged a system with the garden hose and I propped it up. I used bowling balls to prop it up in the lawn so that I could run a scenario here in the lawn to make sure that I like the way that it functioned. If you want to watch that video about how it functions above the ground, make sure to watch the video linked here on the screen. I really do hope that this video was helpful for you. If you have any further questions, drop them in the comment box below.